It's crazy to think that 2008 was almost 20 years ago, but here we are. For anybody who's too young to remember, the early 2000s were sort of like the Wild West for the internet in many ways. Back in 2008, I was in my early 20s, and honestly, I was a bit reckless. I was way too trusting, and I was the king of saying things like, "That could never happen to me." I just never really had that sense of urgency or anxiety that others had. That is, until one spring evening, when I experienced firsthand that downright evil individuals really do exist in the world. Facebook had just started to blow up, but most people I knew were still using MySpace. Social media was a thing, but not like today. We had all heard horror stories about the internet, but nobody I knew actually cared. Or more accurately, we were all just incredibly ignorant. I bring all this up because perhaps the most insane thing about the internet at the time was a little website called Craigslist. Now, I know Craigslist is still around, but it's nothing compared to what it was back in the early 2000s. We didn't have websites like Marketplace, so if you wanted something, you went to Craigslist. You could find and purchase anything, from small trinkets to vehicles, and everything in between. You could even find work or odd jobs for some extra cash. I had heard from friends who used Craigslist all the time that it was the greatest website ever. They swore by it. I never really had any interest in visiting the website until my life started to unravel a bit in the spring of 2008. I was living with my girlfriend, and with almost no notice, she dumped me and threw me out of the house. Thankfully, I wasn't living on the street or anything like that because I had friends who let me crash at their place. I spent the immediate days after the breakup trying to find my own apartment, but it was proving harder than I thought on my 7-an-hour salary. One of my friends whom I mentioned earlier, the one who swore by Craigslist, told me to check it out for possible houses or even rooms for rent. I may have been reckless and ignorant, but surprisingly that was a hard pass for me. I don't know why. I just didn't love the idea. However, I did start looking for furniture and items to eventually fill my place whenever I found one, since she kept everything after the breakup. At first it was like a treasure chest of goods. I could finally see why people loved Craigslist. I literally could find anything I needed. I was finding deals left and right. My buddy had a massive garage that he allowed me to store my recently purchased furniture in until I found my own place. One afternoon, I was looking for a love seat or a small couch to store in the garage. I found a post from a guy named Keith who was selling a whole sectional for $45. He had a picture with the posting, and it was a smaller sectional sofa that could fit in most living rooms. Not to mention, it looked like it was in great shape. The price seemed too good to be true. But like I said, I was ignorant, and I just saw a cool couch and a low price tag. I messaged Keith, and to my surprise, he responded almost right away and told me the couch was still available. He seemed friendly and trustworthy. Well, as trustworthy as anyone can be over messaging on the internet. He told me that he had gotten a new job in another state and was just trying to sell quickly, hence the low price. The reason seemed good enough to me, so we exchanged numbers and set up a time to meet that evening. A meetup that would go on to traumatize me for years and open my eyes to the horror that exists even in our own backyards. I pulled up to the house around 9 p.m. that night. Probably a red flag for most, but not for me at the time. He told me he had some other work arrangement, so he couldn't meet until that time. It didn't seem weird to me. The house was dark, and not just because it was nighttime. Everything looked desolate. It was a very run-down street with almost no street lamps. There were several houses on the block, and they were all just as dark and decrepit as Keith's house. I tried calling Keith several times with the number he gave me, but I kept getting one of those automated responses saying the number was no longer in service. Just as I was about to drive away, my phone buzzed. It was a weird number with a different area code. I answered, and I was greeted with a friendly yet somewhat unnerving voice. His voice was deep and almost erratic. He called me fella and started apologizing about the phone situation. He told me he had broken his phone earlier and was calling me from his work phone. I was definitely a little weirded out, but not scared. Honestly, I was more annoyed than anything. I realize hindsight is 20/20, but at the time, when you're in these situations, your brain works differently. I wasn't thinking about danger. I was thinking about that couch. He told me to meet him around the backside of the house, and he would unlock the back door for me. I didn't even question it. I made my way to the back and couldn't believe how dark it still was. I figured he would turn on some kind of light, but nothing. I got to the back door and just stood there for a moment. I didn't know if he wanted me to walk inside, or if he was coming out to get me. I decided to call him again on what he said was his work phone. Instead of hearing the ring in my ear, I heard a generic ringtone coming from behind me, not from inside the house, but from the bushes in the backyard. I hate to even say this, but this was the first time I finally felt that something wasn't right. Keith ran out from the bushes, waving his ringing flip phone. With that same strange voice, he told me he had been getting rid of some old food and was just coming out to greet me. He said he didn't mean to alarm me. He claimed he liked to feed the squirrels and whatever other animals lived in those bushes. I told him it was fine and that I just wanted to see the couch so I could be on my way. In a cheerful voice, he said, "Of course." He skipped past me, almost stumbling as he passed. We got to the back door, and it looked like he was struggling to open it. When he told me to meet him in the back, I had assumed he would be opening it from inside the house, not trying to open it from the outside. This was the first time I got a good look at Keith. At least, as good a look as I could get in the limited light. He was older, but not old. Maybe late 50s. He was really skinny and had long white hair pulled back into a dirty ponytail. Worst of all, he smelled like a filthy ashtray. He pulled away from the door and asked if I could help him get it open. He said sometimes it would stick, and he was embarrassed that he couldn't get it open. He told me to just use my shoulder and push as hard as I could. At this point, I knew something was wrong, but I was already in the moment, just going along with it. I grabbed the doorknob and lowered my shoulder into the door. It didn't stick at all. In fact, the moment I pushed, someone from the other side opened the door. I had so much momentum that I lost my balance and fell straight to the floor. The second I hit the ground, I heard Keith yell, "Now!" In the darkness, two other people emerged and pinned me down. I started struggling, but it didn't matter. One of the guys was huge. Keith started kicking me in the face. One of the worst parts was the darkness. I couldn't see anything. That made everything feel 10 times worse. I could feel my body starting to weaken from the hits. Then Keith told the other guy to grab the tape. I heard the sound of tape ripping. I couldn't even imagine what they were planning to do. What happened next is probably the closest thing to a miracle that has ever happened to me. During the struggle, when I fell and was being held down, I had accidentally dialed my friend, the same friend I had been staying with. I could hear him yelling hello through the phone, loud and clear. That's when I yelled, "I'm in the back of the house. Come help me." It was a complete bluff. I was alone. but I needed them to believe I wasn't. The big guy loosened his grip and looked at Keith. Keith paused. That 1 second, that was all I needed. I broke free. I ran. I didn't look back. I sprinted to my car, jumped in, locked the doors, and started it. I could hear them chasing me, but I didn't turn around. As I sped off, I saw the big guy clearly for the first time. Bald, patchy beard, but his eyes looked completely lifeless. He was trying to open my car door even as I was driving away. I just kept going. I drove for hours before going back to my friend's place. I was terrified they might follow me. I didn't want them to know where I was staying. I called my friend back and told him everything. Eventually, I contacted the police, but it was too late. The post was gone. The phone was a disposable. Keith had disappeared. I gave them descriptions, but as far as I know, those 3 men are still out there. What scares me the most isn't what happened. It's what almost happened. This wasn't just a robbery. That $45 couch was bait. Whatever they wanted. It wasn't just money. And sometimes I still think about that night and how close I came to never making it out.